Hi, my name's Jack. I make electronic music under the name Adventsong, and today I'm being interviewed by Schaden Collective. To be honest, a lot of it's driven by other music that I listen to. At heart, I'm a huge metalhead, and that's kind of what I grew up listening to. Even though the music I make now is kind of quite far from that, um, it's something I'd like to experiment with more, but hasn't happened yet. I think you can still hear it a bit in some of the kind of harder hitting tracks that I do. And I'm a huge Maiden fan, so every album I've done, most of the EPs end with a ridiculously long track, so you've just got to do it. Um, Nowadays, I find inspiration in a lot of other genres. I was never massively into electronic music until I started writing it about 10 years ago, or whatever, however long ago it was. Um, there were exceptions like Daft Punk and Aphex Twin and kind of the obvious ones, but as I started making music and I got more involved with a label called Disintegration State, I took a lot of inspiration from my peers from that label and kind of the wider electronic music community as well. Um, and I mean, in particular, some label mates like Steve Hadfield, Lowering, Veins Full of Static, Colin Mawson, Sunbane, Mute Branches, all the rest in the label. It was full of really, really talented artists making some really incredible music. And it really pushed me to get better at what I was doing and try and kind of match what they were doing. Um, but a lot of not just that, like a lot of the DNA of what they were doing filtered through into my music as well. Even recently, my latest release, Verdancy, I think owes a lot to an album called Etherore by Steve Hadfield, and also to the work of Henry Courgette, another artist on the label. Um, and then, yeah, in the wider community, music from labels like Bricolage and Waxing Crescent Records and Sea Blue Audio. Um, they all played a big part in what I was doing. Um, and it kind of forced me to go back and fill in some of the gaps in my music knowledge as well. So people like Boards of Canada and stuff like that I'd never listened to. Um, Even though my first album, a review that came out, compared my music to what they were doing, which was cool. I had to go back and educate myself. Um, but yeah, I take a lot of inspiration from other things as well. Um, Not necessarily music related, but from books that I read, um, the bits of media, TV shows, um, like things like Lovecraft, that kind of particular genre of horror. I've been watching a lot of videos by Inside Left on YouTube, and he has a series on some books by Simon Stalenhag, which has really captured my imagination, kind of about the intersection between nature and technology. And that's kind of really kind of got fired up my imagination and played a big part in my last out record in particular, kind of landscapes and worlds and different spaces and all that kind of good stuff gets me going when I'm writing my music. Well, yeah, speaking about other bits of media that I'm interested in and that kind of inspire my music, video games are probably the biggest influence, maybe even more so than other music at points. I was just talking about kind of visualizing different landscapes and kind of how that feeds through into my music, and a lot of that's inspired by, as embarrassing as it is to say, World of Warcraft, and kind of areas in that like Nagrand or Storm Peaks and kind of those sort of floating islands. Games like Skies of Arcadia, Halo, Metroid Prime, Final Fantasy, going a bit further back, have all played a big part on kind of the identity of my music as much as their soundtracks have inspired me. Breath of the Wild was a big influence on Verdancy as well. To be honest, I could talk about this all day. Thinking about music in particular, there are some soundtracks that have really inspired me hugely. Games like Croc and Rayman on the PlayStation, Spyro not long after that, all have fantastic soundtracks. Games like Final Fantasy VII that I mentioned already, Halo and Metroid Prime have soundtracks that I've rinsed over and over again. F-Zero GX was one that was a big crossover for me between guitar music that I listened to a lot of growing up and kind of harder electronic music as well. And more recently, games like Faster Than Light, Bastion, Hollow Knight has probably the best soundtrack of any video game ever. I think it's phenomenal. And yeah, I listen to that stuff a lot. I love video game music, and I'd love to have the opportunity to write the soundtrack for one as well. So yeah, if you're looking for someone to write some music for your video game, hit me up. I'm still working that out, to be honest. I'm still learning. I'm still kind of honing my craft, as pretentious as that sounds. It's a lot of trial and error. When I first started writing music, it was all about poking about in Ableton, finding cool sounds, seeing what I could kind of wrangle that into, and seeing what happened. For a very long time, I couldn't come into back with like a preconceived idea. I needed to just experiment and see what happened. The more I kind of had a set idea of what I wanted the track to be, the harder it was and the worse it sounded. And I was often just battling against the software. In fact, my first EP, which was called Happy Accidents, came out in 2018, I think. The name of that EP came about from stumbling upon cool things, seeing what happened, and that all came together really quickly. Whereas the follow-up that I did, which was my first album, Indico, I went into with grand ideas, had a whole concept, and there was a bit of that experimentation, but a lot of it was this kind of set idea of what I wanted it to be. And I'm really happy with where I got to in the end with it, but it took me a really long time to do. I think as time's gone on, I'm a lot more familiar now with the tools that I use, and I'm finding it easier to make it do what I want it to do. But still have the most fun when I just play around and see what happens. And even more so now, I've experimented a bit more with actually playing the music rather than programming it, because I played guitar for years, but actually like playing keyboards and piano, like I couldn't do until recently. And so it was all kind of writing out the drum beats, the chords, everything in Ableton itself. Whereas now I'm having more fun getting out the instruments and actually writing music that way. Yeah, I think I guess another thing with it all is having kind of core ideas that the music follows. I've mentioned Indico, but most of my stuff has some sort of common theme, even if that's just like a particular time and place, like was the case with Happy Accidents, or an actual story, like with Indico. Once I've got that kind of thread that captures my imagination, a lot of ideas start to kind of coalesce around it, and I won't try and force tracks to fit that. I'll save them for another thing down the line. I like things to have a kind of like releases to have their own identity and have a cohesiveness. It's really hard for me to talk about this without sounding pretentious, but it really differs from record to record. Verdancy was very much about nature and spirituality, with a tiny sprinkling of artificiality in it as well. Kind of how those things all play together is something I'm really interested in. I'm an English literature graduate. My dissertation was on artificial intelligence, the singularity, how that's portrayed in media. And this was years ago now, so kind of before all the chat around it that you see now. And there's a lot of that in my music as well. And really kind of any sort of undergraduate, basic level, pretentious topic gets me going. So things like liminal spaces. I have a track called Busy Beat, and Indico as a whole, all about that. Really easily scared, but horror inspires me a lot, especially Lovecraftian horror, things like Bloodborne, Dark Souls, obviously the original Lovecraft novels as well, really captivate me. I contributed to a Halloween compilation on Disintegration State, and I wrote a track for that called It Comes, which is like explicitly about that. But A lot of my other music has just little bits of influence in there. So there was a track called Abyssal Skies on Indico, which was kind of touching upon some of that stuff. Um, then some other releases, like Before the Storm, was something I wrote during the height of COVID, and that was explicitly about COVID and the kind of grief and loss that surrounded that. So um, it's all very much like what kind of captures my imagination, what I'm preoccupied with at that point in time, and kind of yeah, following that train of thought really. So yeah, I've played live as a solo artist once back in 2019, and that was for a Disintegration State showcase, which was a load of fun. And I think if COVID hadn't put a pause on things, I probably have kept doing it and still be doing it now. But it took me a really long time to prep for it. Like I said before, I wasn't really playing music so much as programming it, so I had to really um, practice really hard to kind of learn the bits that I needed to do, what keys to press at the right times. Like it wasn't so much learning the music as kind of rehearsing uh, buttons to press. So it wouldn't be something I could do easily, like just off the bat. I'd need to put in a bit of time again prepping for it. But I'm also not the sort of person who says no to things. So if the opportunity arose and someone asked if I wanted to do it, I'd probably say yes and jump straight back in. Um, Collaborations is something I love doing. I'm always looking for new things to do and people to work with. And one of the great things about being part of the various kind of music communities that I'm a part of is that lots of other artists are looking to do the same thing. And there's a lot of cool things going on. Back when Disintegration State was still active, there was a lot of cross-pollination between the different artists. There were loads of split releases, loads of compilations, loads of cool ideas to work on. Everyone was doing remixes for each other, and that kind of spirit collaboration is fantastic. Even things like working with like actual artists, like visual artists on album covers and videos and things like that can be really rewarding. So yeah, I'm always up for collaborations, and there's a few things in the works at the moment that are at various stages of completion, but nothing I can talk about yet. But watch this space. Yeah, aside from just getting better at what I do, and again, this is going to sound really pretentious, but I think you can kind of group my releases into two periods. There's all the stuff I released before COVID and the stuff kind of post COVID. Um, and all the stuff before, which includes Before the Storm, was a little bit more serious and po-faced. I took a little break after that, and a lot of the stuff that I started writing afterwards was a bit more fun. Um, I think the way I went about writing music changed as well during that time, um, and I was just having a bit more fun with it on the whole, experimenting a bit more, and also putting in some time to practice and kind of learn um, kind of what the hell I was doing. So some proper production, mixing, mastering as well, all that stuff. So um, hopefully you can hear that. It all sounds a bit more professional, I hope. Yeah. So in the interest of transparency, I'm half Italian, so my answer you could probably predict what it's going to be, and I'm a little biased here. In my day-to-day life, I try and remember that rules are made to be broken, but really deep down, I am a stickler for the rules, and some lines just shouldn't be crossed, and pineapple on pizza is one of them. So, short answer, I'm this sick filth. Really, I just want to get better at what I do. I write music for myself. Obviously, I love the validation I get from people saying they enjoy listening to my music. So there is that part of it, but I just want to keep writing and releasing music, putting stuff out there, and hopefully get it out in front of more and more people. But at the end of the day, I make music that I love listening to myself, and anything beyond that's a bonus. So it's yeah, just keep doing it. So yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but I've just finished work on a project a month or two ago that I can't say anything about yet, but I'm really, really excited about it and can't wait for um, it to be out in the world. Um, I've started work on another collaboration as well, and I've got a couple of albums, maybe two or three records worth that are um, well, just the skeletons of them at the moment and ready to be fleshed out. So hopefully, like, plenty of stuff to keep me going over the next year or two. um, See how it goes. Um, yeah. And then last question: where can fans go to support your work? So I've actually got my own website, which I say I built from scratch. Anyone who knows anything about web development, it's just a WordPress website, so it's not really that impressive. But it's at adventsong.uk. It's got all my releases. It's also got some kind of supplementary stuff like some short stories, liner notes, kind of other hidden goodies. So please check that out and have a dig around on it. It's also got a recommendation page, so if you don't know where to start with listening to my stuff, you can head on there and it'll point you in the right direction. You can also find me on Blue Sky and Instagram, but I kind of think social media sucks, and I'm getting more and more disillusioned with it. So if you want to chat with me, I think the best place are the various forums and Discord communities that I'm on. So there's the Drowned in Sound forums, which are brilliant. I'm a part of the We Create Together Discord community, which is kind of a left um, community of various artists of various disciplines. And then also the Ampool Discord. Ampool's amazing. It's got an amazing community. Forget about Bandcamp. Get involved with Ampool. That's the place to be. Um, and yeah, find me on there. Let's have a chat. And if you can't afford to buy my music and you hate streaming platforms because they also suck, then just send me a message and we'll figure something out. And yeah, make sure you support the underground and stay tuned to Schaden Collective.